Thank you. All right, so hopefully everyone sees some slides. But welcome all to the Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Program 2527 BHD for Tribal Governments. This is a webinar that is going to be an application walkthrough. And I also want this to be an opportunity for any Q&A. I've got some time built in for questions, but I don't want that to preclude anyone from raising your hand and interrupting in the middle. Sometimes you just have a question and need to ask it, and that's totally okay. So feel free to interrupt me, and I'm looking forward to sharing this information with you all. So first, again, just a really quick overview of BHD. We'll go over the definition and goals of deflection programs, the pathways, and then the available funding. I know some of you are returning applicants, and some of you are brand new applicants. So trying to be mindful of all those tuning in to make sure we're operating on the same page here. Deflection programs are defined as collaborative programs between law enforcement agencies and behavioral health entities or community-based social services organizations that assist individuals who may have substance use disorder, another behavioral health disorder, or co-occurring disorders, and who often have other service needs to create community-based pathways to treatment, recovery support services, housing, and case management or other services. The diagram here at the bottom is the sequential intercept model from Sansa Game Center, and it details how folks with mental and substance use disorders come into contact with and move through the criminal justice system. Deflection programs really aim to assist individuals whose behavioral health conditions, including substance use disorder, or another behavioral health condition, or co-occurring disorder, as it says up in the bullets, lead to a heightened likelihood of interactions with law enforcement, incarceration, conviction, or any other engagement with the criminal justice system. That focus is primarily on individuals at Intercept 0 and Intercept 1, that community services and law enforcement at the beginning of the map, left here circled in green. So that is primarily the focus. Deflection is facilitated through pathways. These are a number of ways that folks can enter the program. The 6 listed here on this slide are nationally recognized and established in the CJC's Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Program Best Practices Report, which was published back in April of last year. And the report's available on CJC's website. It's a great resource if you want to kind of have an idea of some best practices to incorporate in your programming. But the 6 pathways are self-referral, active outreach, naloxone plus, first responder and officer referral, also known as officer prevention, as compared to officer intervention, and then lastly, community response. All of these have detailed explanations, not only on our BHD webpage, but in that report. It's a great place to start to familiarize yourself with the pathways and how they operate, and how you may incorporate them or have a desire to use them in your respective jurisdictions. Next, we're going to talk about this solicitation that's currently open, specifically the process, timeline, any important dates, the available funding, which applicants are eligible to apply for funding, what constitutes an eligible expense, and then some of the required components of the application. So first, a timeline. And let's see, the project period for existing grantees was set to end on June 30th at the end of this month. Quite literally, what is that, next week? Wow, time has flown. But all of the 6 existing grantees should have received a amendment in order to extend your project period through the green at the end, bottom right there of the timeline. So all the way through September 30th. And really our intent with that was to just give folks time to complete this application and not have to worry about closing out a grant, especially if you're applying for additional funds. It wouldn't make sense to close out a grant, return funds, and then just get funds once again. So If you haven't already returned that amendment fully executed, please be sure to do so before your project period ends. And yes, hopefully that extension allows for that extra time to focus on this application for additional funds. The project period for the 25-27 funds, which are the funds that we're talking about in this webinar, goes from July 1st of this year, 2026, through August 31st of next year, 2027, and that's a 14-month project period. The solicitation opened last week on June 15th. Applications are due to the CJC no later than 11:59 p.m. on July 30th, 2026. Do note that is not the last day of July, but the day before the last day of July, so July 30th. And then orienting you to time and space on this timeline, you'll see that we're at the very beginning of this application period in the yellow rectangle, as indicated by the blue arrow, kind of like a "you are here" arrow. So it goes through the end of July through the 30th, and then you'll see that there is a orange square that is below September, and that is the application review and award decisions that is going to be taking place at the commission meeting scheduled for early September. So application will close July 30th. Our team will have time to review, reach out with any questions we have or clarifying points, and then we'll bring these before the commission for review and decisions in September. Let's see. I am going to fly by this next slide just out of an interest of time. It's the exact same dates and everything that we went over, but just make sure your application's in before July 30th. All right, on to the funding table. So
real quick,
yes.
Casey. So the application period ended July, and we won't have a decision about whether or not that application was approved or accepted until a time in September.
September 2nd, yeah, or September 1st, sorry, the Tuesday, September 1st.
Okay.
And the real reason was the commission meetings happen at the very beginning of the month, the first Tuesday, and we wanted to extend this application period as long as possible, but we realized between, July 30th and August 3rd, that Monday, the Friday to the Monday, there's no way that we'd be able to read through all your applications and prepare them for a commission meeting. So it's a month out, but that is partially the reason why the current project period extension goes through September 30th, so that you're covered there with, the bases are covered with the funding out and your contract time.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Deborah. And thank you for saying something. I'm flying a little blind here, so like when I'm like looking at my presentation, I can't see anyone. So I really appreciate you speaking up, and I apologize if you were raising your hand and I was missing it.
Hi, my name's Matthew. I'm the new Health Services Grant Coordinator for the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, Isla Indians. And I actually was wondering, with the extension of that, does that create a quarter 5 for reporting requirements as well with the extension?
Yes. So actually, Matthew, thanks for that clarification, and welcome also to BHD. So that Q5 has actually already happened. Avery, please correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm getting the quarters incorrect. But the Q5 will be ending this June 30th, and you'll be reporting on that as part of your regular quarterly reporting in July. Avery, can you nod along to make sure? Okay, cool. Thank you.
That was a good nod.
Then, so that you'll see later in this presentation, that's kind of like a combined task for all returning applicants, including CT-CLUSI.
Okay.
And then for this like extension of project period, you'll essentially go into Q6, Q7, Q8. And I know how terrible that is that we extend our quarters beyond 4. It's just grant world, baby. So that's what we're doing. But that's a great question. So Q5, you'll be reporting on at the same time that you are completing this application, but we rolled it all into one thing. So hopefully that reduces the burden a bit.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering because the extension of the grant into September, right? So you're going July, August, September. That's another 3 months, which would be another quarter. And I was like, okay, so you're just leaving it there and running with it from there and just creating quarters for all of it. Okay.
Thank you for that question, Matthew. And if anything, gets confusing, I would say Avery is our resident expert on quarters and reporting periods. But please feel free to reach out to us, and we can throw up a map or a whiteboard and walk through it together.
No, we're good. Thank you.
All right. So long story short, this is the funding table that we will be referring to for the amount of funding that is available to a respective tribal government for this project period. Specifically the July 1st, 2026 through August 31st of 2027. You'll notice here that there are only 8 of Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribal governments represented. That is because this is reflective of who opted in to apply for these funds. So 8 of Oregon's 9 tribes opted in, and you will see that reflected here. The proverbial pie of funding was sliced into 8 pieces based on that formula. So the dollar amount that is in the right column of this funding formula table is the amount that is available to your tribal jurisdiction for this project period. For returning applicants, this is available funding in addition to your current award. We are not asking for you all to return any unspent funds at this time. We are asking instead that you are mindful of what you already have in the bank that remains unspent, and then to ask for any additional funds that you need in order to, become fully operational, for instance, or bring more components of your program online, and that you are allowed to ask for up to this amount indicated in the right column. That will be in addition to your existing award. It's a really kind of complex topic, and I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well. Are there any questions for returning applicants on what the funding is here in this table? Okay. If any questions come up, let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to say I nailed it and move on. So, eligible applicants include the tribal governments who opted in to apply for the 25-27 funding or their designee. This does include those 8 of Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribal governments. Only one application may be submitted per entity. However, consortia are permitted if there were to be multi-jurisdictional applications on behalf of a consortium of government partners. Wanted to note that if you are operating a consortium, you will need to designate one tribal government as like the applicant, the designee. All respective partners of that consortium will need to complete an application, but the applications are really just going to be contact information and an official designation of a specific tribal government for the lead of your consortium. Only the designee of that consortium will be required to complete the entire application on behalf of your consortium. To date, we haven't been notified that anyone is contemplating a consortium. So I'm hopefully going to skip over a little bit of this stuff, but if that changes or if you have questions and you want to entertain it, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. In terms of required components, there is the establishment of a coordinator with the following program duties, convening deflection program partners as needed for the operation of the program, managing grant program funds awarded, and tracking and reporting data as required by the CJC. Another important required component and something that has changed since maybe the last time that you applied. House Bill 3069 passed in 2025 and kind of refined some of the criteria with regard to the needs of tribal governments and the sovereignty of those nations. That there was previously a required prosecuting authority, like a district attorney, and that just was a huge barrier to participation. And so you'll see here that has been removed. There are now 2 required partners. Like, you must have these folks involved if you're going to be completing a deflection program. I parsed them out into blue and green, so you can see there's 2 types. So at minimum, you must have a law enforcement agency that is participating, aware of, partnering with your deflection program. So that's the one required partner. The other required partner could be either a behavioral health entity, for instance, like a tribal behavioral health department or behavioral health services organization, or a community-based social service organization. So again, sorry to be redundant, but you can have a law enforcement agency and a behavioral health entity, or a law enforcement agency and a community-based social services organization. Those are the required partners for you to participate and be eligible for deflection funding. In terms of allowable expenses, awarded grant funds can be used for expenses including, but not limited to, deflection program operation. What a good thing to spend money on. Law enforcement employees, prosecuting attorneys, behavioral health, case management, or outreach workers, including peer navigators, mobile crisis and support service workers, behavioral health workforce development, capital construction of behavioral health treatment infrastructure, and payment of restitution to a victim if potential or outstanding restitution is a barrier to that individual participating in the deflection program. Notably, grant funds may also be used for the development of deflection programs. For returning applicants, that's kind of what your grant funds have been spent on for the majority of this last project period, is the planning and development. For new applicants, that is open to you as well. But I will pause here again, just kind of, we've gone through the overview of the deflection programs. I'm about to go through the application walkthrough now. But are there any questions before I hop into that?
Just contingency management wasn't really, don't fit nicely into those allowable expenses.
Oh, yeah, Devery, thank you for bringing that up. So importantly, including but not limited to the things on this page, contingency management is an allowable expense for deflection programming. These specific, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points are listed in the bill. So there were like specific call outs to these things, but there are many things that are eligible for deflection grant funding that are not listed here. And contingency management is an allowable expense. So thank you for bringing that up. And if you see something else, or if you think of something else and you don't see it on this page and you have a question about it, please feel free to reach out or consult our grant administration guide, which is on our website and also included as a link in the solicitation. There are some great resources as to like what's allowed, but what's not allowed. Something I'm not seeing here, like off the top of my head, is like stabilization supplies. A huge, important thing for deflection. And like food for stabilization purposes, hygiene supplies, clothing, etc. that stuff is not listed here, but is absolutely an eligible expense for deflection funding. Okay. So the application kind of like to-dos differ a bit between the brand new applicants, which are the folks who have not previously received a BHD grant. What we need from those two tribes who have opted in, specifically I'll call them out, Coquel tribe and the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians. So for those two brand new applicants, we'll need responses to all application questions. And that's where you'll kind of note your plans, identify partners, workflows, etc. And then a budget projection sheet in which that your grand total for operation of this project period, again, July 1st, 2026 through August 31st, 2027, must not exceed, but could be less than, the number in that right column of the formula funding table. For returning applicants, so the 6 tribal governments who previously received a BHD grant, who currently hold a BHD grant, we are requesting responses to all application questions. This is where you'll provide details about your program, including referral pathways, operational workflows, criteria for participation, eligibility, exclusion, and success. And then I wanted to note too that for returning applicants, you are expected to have an operational program no later than January 1st of 2027. We also will be soliciting an updated expense tracker for returning applicants. So that is just kind of, more or less what you are accustomed to sending to us via quarterly reporting. Matthew, this kind of gets at your question of like, hey, are we reporting on Q5? The answer is yes. This is where you will input your expenditures that occurred for April 1st of 2000, April 1st, 2026 through June 30th of 2026. And that will be an important step 1 in this behemoth of a Excel document, because that will like basically auto input what funding remains available of like the current grant award that you hold. And then you'll be asked to input a budget projection that, contemplates and could potentially include any past line items and allows you the opportunity to add additional line items. Again, with the amount of funding that's added to your previous award must not exceed, but may be less than the amount listed on the formula funding table. So for instance, if an applicant received a 23-25 award of $150,000 and their 2025 to 2027 allocation is $150,000, your total budget projection must fall between $150,000 and $300,000. So somewhere between the award that you already have and the total amount that you could ask, your up to amount. Again, for the record, it's our recommendation that applicants really only ask for what you need to operate during this 14-month project period, being mindful that any funds that are not expended by August 31st, 2027 must be returned to the CJC. So ask for what you need, but you don't need to ask for more than what you need. Right, hopping into it. This is where you can find the BHD tribal funding table. Should you need a quick resource, this is the Behavioral Health Deflection webpage on the CJC's website. And then this is also where you can access the tribal solicitation. These things were emailed out to you by Avery last week as well. Getting into it, in the solicitation, there's some components, some general guidelines and the purpose, eligible applicants, eligible expenses, etc. The important dates. Then in that solicitation too, there's a printout of all the application questions that will be asked. It might look really overwhelming, but do know that it probably includes like a lot of skip logic, where it's like if you answer no to one thing, you skip 5 questions. You know what I mean? So don't feel overwhelmed if you're reading through that. Instead, use it as a resource, maybe to plan if you don't want to be in front of your computer planning. But I will say for at least half of the tribal governments who are returning and applying for funds, you already have identified a lot of these operational workflows, the pathways that you're hoping to operate, the identified partners, etc. So I'm hoping that this application is either a mirror image of a operational plan that you've already submitted, or that you've identified a lot of these as part of your planning process, and will hopefully not be too big of a lift. Again, funding table, great resource, and then sample grant agreement should you want to review it, or should anyone in your financial departments want to review it. Okay. This webinar is being recorded, and I want it to be a resource for both new applicants and returning applicants. I did choose to do new applicants first. Is there anyone on this call that is a brand new applicant? I don't think so. Okay. Well, then, folks, I guess buckle up, hold steady for a second while I go through this for the recording. But we'll get to the returning applicant stuff here shortly. There are components of this new application that are exactly equal for the returning ones, and I'll try to note that verbally for you. So, for instance, first off, if you need to invite a collaborator to your application, you may do so by logging in and selecting this button here, Add Collaborator, which will then pull up a little window in which you can invite folks via email address to view and edit the application, or to view only, depending on the amount of collaboration that you need. For new applicants, there will be 3 tasks that need to be completed: a cover sheet, application questions, and budget projection. The cover sheet is identical for both new applicants and returning applicants. So folks on this call, feel free to tune in right now and be aware that you also will need to select your tribal government from the drop-down list. Your drop-down list will include all the returning applicants if you're in the returning applicant application. But if you're in this new applicant application, there will only be 2 to choose from. So know that, but find yourself there and then indicate whether or not you are part of a consortium or not. And then that would probably open up some additional questions. You'll then be asked to identify the primary applicant contact. This is the individual that we will contact regarding the application. So if we have questions, this is the person we're reaching out to. If there is someone other than the primary applicant contact that will be responsible for entering program data, please select yes here and input their information as the data contact. Otherwise, we will assume that your primary contact is your data person, and we'll be reaching out to them with data questions as well. Then you'll be entering in the fiscal contact information here. Note that the legal name of the organization receiving payment, the state employer identification number, and an accurate address are critical here in order to get your program set up with the Oregon Department of Administrative Services to receive payment. And here you will indicate whether you prefer to receive payment via direct deposit or via a mailed check. Note at the bottom here, there are 2 options. You can either save and continue editing with the button on the left. This allows you to save, exit, and return to your application later. You'll see the in progress status here represented by a half green circle. Alternatively, back on the cover sheet, by selecting the green button here, this allows you to mark the task as complete, and you'll still be able to edit it before submission. And then a quick note on the consortia stuff. Earlier in that cover sheet, there's an option to indicate that this application is for a tribal government that is part of a consortium. If that's the case, you'll indicate so via the second option and be directed to more consortia-related questions. The second orange box here at the bottom is where you'll select all other tribal governments that make up the consortium. And if your tribal government was established as the designee to apply for the BHD grant, you'll fill out the rest of the cover sheet with contact information as we previously saw. If your tribal government was not the designated applicant on behalf of your consortium, you'll select who is from this drop-down menu, and then select this box at the bottom, acknowledging that your jurisdiction's proportion of funds will be distributed to the tribal government indicated above. If you are not the if you are not the designee, trying to think, is it not or yes? If you're not the designee for your consortium, you're going to indicate so, and for each of the other required tasks, and then you'll save after each step, and your application is ready to submit. You will not be required to complete the whole application. If you are the designee, you'll be required to complete the whole application. So back to the individual tribal government application. You just marked your cover sheet as complete. You'll see that it has a green check mark, and you'll notice that the status bar now shows that you have 1 out of 3 tasks complete. If you mark something as complete, but you want to go back to edit it, you may do so by clicking the task that is specific, the one you want to edit, and then navigating to the 3 dots in the corner here, and then you'll open that up and select edit. So onto application questions for new applicants. As first step of these application questions, we're going to ask you to indicate whether your program's current phase of the implementation best aligns with planning or operational. For planning grant, funds may be used for convening partners, learning about community needs, staff training, developing implementation operational plans for a proposed deflection program. For an operational grant, your plans for a proposed deflection program have been established. Funds will be used to implement and operate the program. And then you will also need to acknowledge that your program is already serving individuals or will be ready to serve individuals by January 1st, 2027. If you select planning grant, the next questions inquire about your program plan, coordinator, partnerships, expected operational date. Do note that obviously the CJC recognizes that applicants are at various stages of development with deflection programming. The evaluation of your actual application will not be adversely affected if you haven't identified all components requested in questions 2, 3, and 5 of this section for those new applicants with planning grants only. If you have identified a deflection program coordinator in your planning grant, you will enter their information here. If you have not yet identified a coordinator, you'll be asked to identify the employing entity for the position or explain what efforts are underway to make that determination. Next, you'll indicate all organizations that are currently involved in the development and or in administration of your tribe's deflection program. Good practice for a new application. Remember that law enforcement agency and then either a behavioral health entity or a community-based social service organization must be involved in order to actually have an approved deflection program. So get those folks on board as soon as you can. Following that info, you'll provide the agency or organization names for each of the deflection partners that you indicated. Listing an entity or organization here means that they are actively engaged with your deflection program. So they're providing referrals, and maybe they're actually like helping out with an active outreach pathway, they're providing other services, etc. Do not list your local court here, for instance, if you have only had conversations to notify them of the existence of your program. There's also no need to really list an organization more than once. If it fits under multiple organization types, just select the best fit. You'll be then asked to describe your coordination efforts to date and indicate the estimated operational date for your program. We're looking for clear, concise explanations. There are word limits, and if you do not yet know when your program will be operational and you are indicated the planning grant, you can indicate TBD, to be determined, here. Okay, so rewinding back a little bit, had you chosen operational grant, you will find in-depth questions to provide information about the details of your program. Returning applicants, so the 6 tribes who are applying for additional funds, this is a great time to tune back in, because the operational grant questions are like nearly identical. So you will be directed to enter in your program coordinator's information. This is the individual who is responsible for convening those deflection program partners, managing grant program funds, tracking and reporting data as required by the CJC. You will also be asked to indicate how your program coordinator is funded. Obviously, you may use BHD funds to pay for your coordinator. If there are other like braided funding sources, please indicate so here. And then lastly, you will select the box to acknowledge that this coordinator will perform the required duties and that the tribe will notify the CJC if that person changes anytime in the future. As an operational program, you have to have those required partners on board. So here in this kind of like section B, you'll indicate the names of the agencies and organizations of those required local partners that are involved in the development and or administration of your tribe's deflection program. So first, at minimum, you must indicate which law enforcement agency you're partnering with, and then either a community-based social services organization or behavioral health entity. I forgot to mention that I'd fill all this out on behalf of my pets. So if you're seeing like courts and weird pet things, that's why. Moving on, you'll be asked to attest that you have indeed coordinated with all those required partners identified earlier on the development and administration of your program. And then you'll be asked to describe that coordination and also share how information about program participants will be communicated with those entities. In section C, you'll provide specific program details about the operation of your deflection program. First, you'll enter the month and year that your deflection program began operating. Again, it's like in pilot stage right now, that's okay. This is the date that your program like began accepting referrals and actual participants enrolling. If your program is still in that pilot phase, be sure to enter in no later than January of 2027 that your program will become operational. Next, you'll be asked to select all nationally recognized deflection referral pathways that BHD funds, so funds from this grant, currently or will support. A selection here means that participant referrals to your deflection program are made through the selected pathway and that those referrals are or will be tracked and reported. So you'll see here, I selected active outreach. For each pathway you select, so I only selected active outreach, I only will have active outreach to complete. If you have more than one, you'll have these for each of the pathways you selected. You'll be asked to describe how it operates or will operate in your jurisdiction. It's important to include the entire workflow. We really need to understand from the initial point of contact to someone in the world, in the field, to the referral of that individual to a program, to the actual engagement of that individual with treatment or services, including all the key players along the way, be it a peer navigator, a law enforcement officer, service provider. This is where you will state that. You will also be asked if it's currently operating. If a particular pathway you selected is not yet operational but will be, you'll indicate so with an anticipated start date. C3 inquires about who is eligible to enter your program and whether or not there's any variation by pathway. So you'll see here, selected a couple different eligibility criteria, included other low-level offenses. And then I also said that there is variation eligibility in among my selected pathways. And for instance, like self-referral and active outreach don't require any criminal charges to be present. So that is just a quirk I wanted to point out. Let me know if you have questions about that as you complete your applications. C4 inquires about any criteria that may exclude an individual from participating in your program. For instance, here I selected excludes individuals who do not have tribal affiliation. You'll also be asked if there's variation among the selected pathways. And C5 is where you'll identify all criteria for your program, that your program uses to determine that someone has successfully completed deflection. You will also be asked if this varies among selected pathways. That wraps up the application questions. So you can either save your progress or mark this task as complete. You'll see your progress recorded here. And as a reminder, you can click those three dots in the top right to either download, reset, or edit your responses. So for new applicants, the last task is a budget projection sheet upload. You will be directed to upload it here. You can download the budget projection sheet for new applicants only at this little hyperlink here. If you're a returning applicant, you will not see this link. You can refer to the formula funding table. It's a standard CJC budget projection sheet. Make sure you save a copy to your computer so that you can upload it to your application. You'll enter the name of your tribal government here. And again, some important things to note. Project period, 14 months, July 1st, 2026 through August 31st, 2027. And you may request up to the total amount listed in the formula funding table for your tribal government. You also may request less. Please take into consideration your jurisdiction's needs and only request the amount that your jurisdiction needs to plan or operate. Any unspent funds will need to be returned to the CJC within 30 days of the project period end date. So you upload that, then you can either save and continue or mark as complete. If you mark it as complete, you'll show that 3 of 3 tasks have been completed and you're ready to review or submit. For returning applicants, so those who are currently a BHD grant recipient, you will see 4 tasks. The cover sheet is identical for what you saw for the new applicant. The application questions are identical to what you saw for the operational program in that other application. The key difference here is that your Q5 expense tracking as part of your normal quarterly reporting is combined with your application's budget projection sheet into one document because one informs the other. All 6 returning applicants received that 25-27 expense tracker last week via an email from Avery. So I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and reshare that document to the best of my ability. So if you're a returning applicant, this is what you will see. Please begin here at the instructions page. You'll see that there's a step 1 that's blue and refers to the blue tab at the bottom, the 23-25 expense tracker tab. This is where you will input your Q5 expenditures. And all of your approved line items and previous expenditures have been copied over to the sheet. This must be completed first before you move on. It's critical to have basically an accurate budget projection tab. After you complete your Q5 expense tracker, you can move on to the yellow tab, step 2, which is the 25-27 budget projection tab. You want to go through for every single line item, determine which ones you want to retain for this project period, the 14 months. You'll add any additional line items, and there's detailed instructions there. Okay, so I'm going to go on step 1, input, like for, this budget expense tracker, I would input in the Q5, this column L right here, what I spent this last quarter. I'm just making these numbers up. This is specifically an example. So, bear with me here. But let's say that we spent $12,000 for that case manager, and we'll do 10 grand for that peer navigator. You'll see that tribal police department position was previously eliminated. Looks like it was, part of a Q3 adjustment. So $0 for there. You do that for all of the budget categories to get an accurate number of what was spent in Q5. So that informs the next step. So let's go ahead, for the sake of time, pretend I did all of that. All of my Q5 expenditures are in, and I'm ready to move on to step 2, the budget projection yellow tab. Here is where, for every single line item I have, I will input the amount of additional funds from the up to amount in my the up to amount in my funding table, when combined with the amount that remains. You see I have 29 grand and change left for my case manager. This is where I will put that funding in. So we could say I want an additional $40,000 for this case manager. By inputting something here, I have additional work to complete. You'll see now I need to indicate the FTE. So I'll say 100% here. I want 10 months here. Avery, I saw you come off. What you want to chime in?
Yes, I just want to clarify that the new budget total isn't the additional amount. It is your new total request. So it wouldn't be the 29 plus 40. It would be like, we had 29 remaining for the next 14 months. We actually need like 40,000.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Great. So that's in there. And then let's say for the peer navigator, it's 50 grand. I was messing around with this earlier, so I apologize. But okay. So nothing exceeds 14 months because that's the maximum allowed for this project period. It doesn't have to be 14 months though, as indicated by the case manager. I don't need the triple PD position. I'm going to indicate 0 there. But I have a new line item that like a new position that I'd like to add. We'll call that, I don't know, I'm going to fund my program coordinator. And by entering, wow, I don't know why I did that there. Sorry about that. By entering in a total amount here, we'll say $50,000. You'll see the additional work comes. This is where I meant to put that program coordinator. They're going to work on this 50% of the time for the remaining 14 months. They're with our tribal behavioral health. And then here is where I would write the detailed explanation of, why we need that position and what it does to meet the goals and intent of deflection. So that is how we would go about adding a new line item. And you would do this for every single line item that exists and enter in anything new here. There's a good note that if you no longer wish to include an existing line item, for instance, you know what, we no longer need the support services, we can do so by entering a 0 in that column. But let's say for housing facilities, I wanted to do like $15,000 in rent assistance. Again, it will, tell me here the additional information I need to input. So that's the kind of the high level overview of this document. I'll pause now in this document, I guess, for any questions. So after you have that expense tracker, budget projection sheet, amazing document, all complete, again, make sure you save it, you'll upload it, and then that will be the 3 of 4 tasks complete. The remaining task would be our pilot phase of data reporting. Many of you have been in on the data listening sessions that Will has hosted this year. And we are finally entering into this like pilot phase of data reporting. As a reminder, it's de-identified, it's aggregate. Will has a fantastic webinar on this coming up this Friday, June 26th. And I'm forgetting the time now, Will. I think do you mind chiming in?
It is at 11.
11 a.m. Thank you, Will. It also will be recorded and made available to everyone. So if you can't make it at that specific time, it will be recorded as a resource for you to use. Also, please feel free to reach out to Will. But that is your 4th and final task of this application and quarterly reporting combined process. And then, yes, you'll submit all of that by July 30th, and we will reach out to you with any questions. But please do not hesitate to reach out to us in the meantime. Should you have any questions, we acknowledge that this is kind of a complex process for returning applicants, but really with the goal of condensing this so that you're not doing it in multiple places and being moved from one stage to the other with our limited grant management software capabilities. So thank you for your patience, and please reach out if you need any assistance with SM Apply. But I'll pause here to see if there are any questions from returning applicants, new applicants, CJ's ears for what it matters, about this application that is due July 30th. All right, hearing and seeing none. Thanks, Kelly, appreciate that. Great. Well, again, don't be shy over email. I'm happy to walk through this with you. If there's anything extra persnickety and SM Apply, Avery is your gal. So please feel free to reach out to her. And yeah, we are here to help and assist you get all this information together and submitted before July 30th. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. But I will call it there. And thank you for tuning in today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Casey.